Beretta has been making firearms since 1526. That's not a rounding error. The earliest confirmed contract in the company's records, a supply of arquebus barrels to the Arsenal of Venice, predates the English Civil War by over 100 years, predates the formation of the United States by 2.5 centuries, 500 years of continuous manufacture. By the time Beretta walked into the floor at the Defence and Security Equipment International Exhibition in London in September 2023 and pulled the wraps off the new assault rifle platform, they were pitching a rifle to replace the SA80 in the country where they first made their name. The NARP is not an iteration, it's not a derivative, it is Beretta's clean sheet answer to what a modern military assault rifle should be. Developed from 2018 with direct input of Italian Special Forces and now entering service with the Italian Army as its primary individual weapon, its candidacy for Project Grayburn is simultaneously one of the most technically interesting and commercially complex propositions in the competition. This is episode 4 of the Project Grayburn series. We've already covered the HK416, the HK433 and the SIG MCX. This episode is the Beretta NARP. To understand the NARP, it helps to understand what it replaced and, more importantly, why replacement was necessary at all. Beretta's previous service rifle, the ARX-160, entered development in the early 2000s and was adopted by the Italian Army around 2008. It was genuinely innovative for its time. Polymer upper and lower receivers, where most competitors were still building in aluminium. A rotating bolt driven by a short-stroke gas piston, a side-folding stock, ambidextrous controls that were ahead of the curve in a period when most Western rifles still expected right-handed shooters as the default. The ARX-160 saw service with the Italian forces and a number of other users, including a variant procured by the United States Special Operations Command for training partner forces, but its commercial footprint remained limited. Outside Italy, adoption was narrow, and by the late 2010s, the global military small arms market had moved hard in a direction the ARX-160 was not optimally positioned for. The convergence towards the AR-15 pattern ergonomics as a de facto standard had become decisive. NATO forces with decades of M16 and M4 muscle memory were increasingly specifying controls that replicated that manual of arms. The ARX-160's layout, though ambidextrous and thoughtfully designed, was sufficiently different from the AR-15 that it imposed a retraining overhead. In the procurement environment, where interoperability, familiarization costs and cross-training with allied forces all factor into selection decisions, that mattered. In 2018, Beretta initiated the NARP program. The brief was not to update the ARX-160, it was to build a new platform that would meet the requirements of Italy's special forces, pass current and anticipated NATO trials, and do so while adopting the AR-15 pattern controls as its ergonomic baseline, reducing the learning curve for operators transitioning from M4 pattern weapons to something approaching zero. The development cycle ran through the COVID pandemic, which delayed testing timelines, but by 2022, pre-production prototypes were being built. By the time DSEI 2023 opened in London, 9 Phase 2 prototypes were already in the hands of Italian Army soldiers for operational evaluation. The NARP is a short-stroke gas piston rifle with a rotating bolt. The gas system sits above the barrel and uses a 2-position adjustable gas block, one setting for unsuppressed fire, one for suppressed. That 2-position approach has become something close to a standard on modern military platforms, reflecting the expectation that suppressor integration is a baseline requirement rather than an optional extra. The HK433 and MCX both incorporate similar thinking. Beretta's implementation is notable for being accessible from the front of the handguard without tools, simplifying maintenance in the field. Unlike the direct impingement systems on some competitors, the short-stroke piston keeps combustion gases further from the bolt carrier group. The result, in Beretta's own language, is reduced heat and fouling at the chamber end of the action. They also claim the rifle functions correctly without lubrication, a characteristic they attribute to surface coating on moving parts. That claim should be treated as manufacturer's assertion pending independent operational confirmation. The bolt carrier group itself uses what Beretta describes as a prismatic profile, a non-cylindrical cross-section that reduces the contact surface between carrier and receiver, which they argue limits fouling, accumulation, and associated stoppages. Whether that delivers meaningful reliability gains over conventional cylindrical designs in long-term operational use is a question only sustained fielding data will answer. Mean rounds between stoppages, per Beretta's own testing, sits at approximately 15,000 rounds. That figure is from in-house NATO standard testing and has not been independently verified through operational use at scale. For comparison, the HK416 has established MRBS reputation built on years of active service with multiple armies. The NARP's figure are currently manufacturer derived. The bufferless architecture. This is technically significant and worth spending time on. The AR-15's platform's recoil spring sits inside a buffer tube that extends rearward from the lower receiver. That tube is the reason conventional AR-15s cannot have a full folding stock. Fold it and you block the travel of the buffer. Various workarounds exist, including MCX's approach of relocating a recoil spring into the upper receiver, but they typically add complexity or weight. The NARP solves this at the design stage. Its recoil spring lives in the upper receiver, similar in concept to the MCX's approach, but built into the platform from the outset rather than retrofitted. There is no buffer tube. This means the NARP accepts a full range of stock configurations, including telescoping, collapsing, and fully folding stocks without any mechanical constraint. The folding stock is not simply a CQB convenience. It has meaningful operational value in vehicle mounting, aircraft transit, and weapon storage, reducing the footprint of a stowed rifle in situations where every centimeter of space is contested. Physical characteristics. In the 14.5-inch barrel configuration, the variant most likely to represent the standard dismounted close combat variant, if selected for Grayburn, the NARP weighs 3.3 kilograms with an empty polymer magazine fitted. Overall length runs 888mm with the stock extended, 806mm collapsed. For reference, the SA80 L85 A3 with its 20.4-inch barrel weighs approximately 3.82 kilograms with an empty magazine. The NARP is lighter and carries a 14.5-inch barrel rather than the SA80's 20.4. The ballpark layout of the SA80 allowed a full-length barrel in a compact overall dimension. The shift to a conventional layout in any Grayburn replacement necessarily involves trading barrel length for the ergonomic and ambidextrous benefits of a conventional configuration. Cyclic rate sits at 700 rounds per minute, plus or minus 70. That is a moderate figure, comparable to the HK416 and HK433, and deliberately so. Beretta designed the rate of fire to balance controllability in automatic fire against mechanical reliability. The selector offers safe, semi-automatic and automatic modes, with single-stage and two-stage trigger options available depending on the procurement specification. Control and ergonomics. The NARP is fully ambidextrous throughout. Magazine release, bolt catch, fire selector and charging handle. The charging handle is a non-reciprocating T-lever design positioned at the rear of the upper receiver. It does not move during firing. Ejection can be configured for either side. The handguard uses M-LOK interfaces with a full-length MIL standard 1913 rail at the 12 o'clock position. The barrel fits standard Stagnag 4640 suppressors and is also compatible with Beretta's own B-Silent suppressor system. Stagnag magazines are the feed standard. The platform has been demonstrated with both Lancer L5 AWM and Magpul P-Mag variants. The receiver interfaces are conventional, meaning the entire ecosystem of NATO-compatible accessories applies without modification. Disassembly is toolless. Field stripping is described by Beretta as a front access procedure. The gas system is accessed from the muzzle end of the handguard without requiring the weapon to be inverted or any immediate components removed. For soldiers maintaining weapons in the field, particularly in cold weather with reduced manual dexterity, that is an operationally relevant consideration. The barrel family. The initial NARP family ships in 3 barrel lengths for the 5.56 NATO variant, 11.5 inches, 14.5 inches and 16 inches. Longer variants, 18 inch and 20 inch, are part of the planned family, but were not in the initial production configuration. The barrel is a quick change design, held by a single latch, allowing field reconfiguration with the same caliber family. On caliber, the NARP currently ships in 5.56 by 45mm NATO. Beretta has publicly indicated its roadmap includes 300 blackout, 6.5 Grendel and 7.62 by 51mm variants. The 7.62 would require a large action receiver and is on a longer development timeline. The 6.5 Grendel variant is of particular relevance to Grayburn, given the MOD's stated interest in options offering greater lethality than 5.56 at extended range. In May 2026, Beretta unveiled the Titan, a semi-automatic concept rifle built on the NARP architecture and chambered in 6.5 Grendel, using a titanium upper receiver, magnesium lower and carbon fiber stock. The Titan functions as a high-end engineering showpiece tied to Beretta's 500th anniversary, 2026 making 500 years since the first verified contract with the Arsenal of Venice, rather than a standard service rifle. Its existence nonetheless proves that an intermediate caliber NARP architecture is fully operational in hardware rather than remaining in a roadmap slide. The military select-fire 6.5 Grendel variant remains a developmental target rather than a mass production capability. Upper and lower receivers. A departure from the ARX 160 worth noting explicitly. Both upper and lower receivers on the NARP are aluminium, not polymer. That represents a deliberate move towards increased structural rigidity and dimensional stability under sustained fire and temperature variation. It adds marginal weight compared to a polymer construction, but the platform still comes in lighter than the SA80 L85 A3 despite the conventional layout and shorter barrel. Low-rate initial production of the NARP commenced in 2024. By 2025, the platform had moved from evaluation into actual fielding with the Italian Army units. By the time of writing, May 2026, 4 Gore Brigade paratroopers and Alpini mountain troops have been photographed with the NARP at official Italian Army events, including the 165th anniversary celebrations of the Italian Army at L'Aquila. That is a meaningful milestone. The NARP is no longer a prototype or a trade show demonstrator. It is in-service weapon of the Italian Armed Forces, undergoing the beginning of real operational use. Whether the fielding data emerging from that use will be available in sufficient depth to inform the Grayburn assessment is a timing question. The Italian Army adoption is recent, and large-scale operational use across varied environments takes time to produce the kind of evidence base that procurement evaluators require. The NARP is also entering service, while the Grayburn assessment phase is expected to begin in 2026. That is both an advantage and a risk. An advantage because Beretta can point to in-service status rather than merely prototype testing. A risk because the operational data set is thin compared to contenders whose platforms have been in continuous service with multiple armies for a decade or more. The Italian Special Forces development lineage is worth contextualizing. The NARP was initiated with input from COMFOS, the Italian Army Special Forces Command. That origin shapes the design priorities. Modularity, suppressibility, ambidextrous function, and reliability across operational environments are all features that the Special Forces requirements push to the front of the specification. The platform was designed to meet the demands of high readiness, high intensity users, and then scaled out to general service. The same direction of travel seen in HK416's movement from special operations adoption into broader service. The Beretta NARP does not arrive at Project Grayburn in isolation. Understanding what BDT UK is actually offering to the Ministry of Defence requires stepping back from the rifle itself. Beretta Defence Technologies, BDT, is the defence arm of the wider Beretta holding group. Under that umbrella sit 3 entities relevant to Grayburn. Beretta itself produces the NARP, Sako, the Finnish manufacturer whose Arctic rifle generation platform is Episode 5 of the series, and Steiner, a German optics manufacturer. BDT UK is proposing all three as an integrated system. The proposition to MOD is, therefore, a standard dismounted close combat rifle in the NARP, a combat support or specialist variant in the Sako ARG, and Op6 from Steiner, sourced from a single supplier relationship with consolidated through life support and a single point of accountability. That integration is a deliberate commercial differentiator. No other single entity in the Grayburn competition can offer two in-service rifles and a complementary optics capability under one contract relationship. MOD's January 2026 pipeline notice confirmed the 5 variant requirement that Grayburn must deliver: the standard dismounted close combat rifle replacing the L85A3, a short dismounted close combat variant, a personal defense weapon replacing the L22 carbine, a generalist rifle replacing the L85A2, and a cadet rifle replacing the L98. All 5 must derive from a common receiver. That common platform requirement is a key filter. It constrains which manufacturers can credibly compete and forces any winning bidder to demonstrate that their platform can genuinely support the full variant family and not just the headline infantry rifle. This is the distinctive element of BDT's UK Grayburn strategy, and it merits careful examination because it speaks directly to what MOD has made explicit as competition requirement. In 2001, the Royal Ordnance Factory at Nottingham, which had manufactured small arms for the British military for over 200 years, closed. The United Kingdom has had no domestic small arms manufacturing capability at scale since that closure. Every rifle the British Army has acquired since then has been manufactured abroad. MOD's 2026 pipeline notice is unambiguous on this point. The winning Grayburn platform must be manufactured in the United Kingdom. It must generate skilled employment. It must be exportable. These are not preference criteria, they are structural requirements of the competition. Any contender whose industrial offer does not meet them is not competing for the same contract. BDT's UK Land Industrial Strategy, launched at DSEI in September 2025, is the most detailed public response to these criteria from any Grayburn contender to date. The strategy centres on BDT UK's Skydock facility in Lincolnshire, a 405 hectare site that includes a 210 metre indoor ballistic testing range, a legacy of its wartime use for aircraft ammunition, and presents tiered industrialisation options to MOD ranging from 5% UK manufactured content through to 100% UK production. The document maps each tier against unit price, domestic investment and jobs created, giving MOD a genuine decision framework rather than a commitment to a single model. The component manufacturing piece of that model has a named partner. At DSEI 2025, BDT UK signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Cambridge Precision, a UK precision engineering firm, to manufacture the upper and lower receivers, foregrip, trigger assembly and bolt carrier group for the Grayburn bid. Should the bid succeed, those components would be shipped to the Skydock facility for assembly, inspection and testing, with barrel supply in phase 1 coming from Beretta or Sako until phase 2 barrel production can be established domestically. That supply chain model is important because it describes a distributed but fully UK rooted manufacturing chain, not merely a final assembly operation on imported parts. The proofing question, which presents a genuine bottleneck in any small arms manufacturing pipeline, has also been addressed. In May 2026 at SOF Week in Tampa, BDT UK announced an exclusive agreement with the London Proof House, the UK statutory authority for small arms testing and safety certification under the Gun Barrel Proof Act. The London Proof House would provide all weapons proofing for the NARP or Sako ARG40 should the Grayburn bid succeed. It is a specific, legally meaningful step rather than a general commitment, and it de-risks a stage of the manufacturing process that competitors have not publicly addressed. Jack Cadman, Military Group Manager at BDT UK, stated by March 2026 that the overall contract should generate between 100 and 120 jobs. That figure is BDT UK's own projection and will depend substantially on the demand level and the chosen industrialisation tier agreed with the MOD. BDT draws on two precedents to evidence its credibility in establishing indigenous manufacturing capability. The first is the Beretta M9 contract with the US Department of Defense in the 1980s. The second is BINDIG, a joint venture between BDT and Qatar's Barzan Holdings, which created a domestic firearms manufacturing capability in Qatar. Both demonstrate that BDT has executed onshoring agreements in practice rather than simply proposed them. What has changed since BDT UK published its strategy is that the industrial argument is no longer uncontested. In March 2026, Heckler & Koch UK acquired Globe Engineering, a precise CNC machining firm in Braintree, Essex, with over 40 years of experience in aerospace and defence manufacturing and AS9100D accreditation. HK UK, which has operated in Britain since the 1960s and delivered successive SA80 upgrade programs through the Nottingham Small Arms facility, now has a physical domestic manufacturing footprint to anchor its own Grayburn pitch. What began as BDT UK's distinguishing argument has become a contest. The competition is no longer solely about which rifle performs best in trials, it is also about which manufacturer can build the most credible British supply chain. BDT UK retains the more developed public proposition, with Cambridge Precision, Skydock and the London Proof House Agreement forming a documented chain. HK UK's Globe Engineering acquisition is more recent and less elaborated. Whether MOD treats these differences as material is a question that assessment phase will answer. The NARP's candidacy for Grayburn sits at the intersection of a technically competitive platform and a commercially ambitious industrial strategy. Both elements carry genuine uncertainty. On the platform, the NARP is newer than most of its competitors. The HK416 has been in continuous service since 2004 and has accumulated operational data across multiple complex climates and force structures. The MCX has at least Royal Marines and US Special Operations Command service to draw on. The NARP has Italian Army adoption from 2025, with large-scale operational use at an early stage. Reliability claims at 15,000 rounds MRBS are from Beretta's own testing programs. Independent operational validation through sustained real-world use has not yet had time to accumulate. The caliber question remains unresolved to every Grayburn contender, but it is particularly salient for the NARP. If MOD moves towards 6.5 Grendel or another intermediate caliber with greater terminal performance at range, Beretta's declared roadmap includes that option, but the variant is not yet in production. If MOD retains 5.56 NATO for interoperability concerns, the NARP competes on its current production configuration. The caliber decision is MOD's to make, and BDT UK has explicitly stated it cannot advise MOD on caliber choice as a participant in the competition. The timeline carries its own pressure in both directions. MOD's assessment phase is expected to begin during 2026, with contract award potentially in late 2026 or early 2027. The SA80 L85 A3's out-of-service date has slipped from 2030 to 2035. That extended window reduces urgency, but also extends the period during which competing platforms can accumulate further operational data, which benefits the more established contenders more than it benefits the NARP. The integrated BDT UK offer, NARP plus Sako ARG plus Dyno Optics, creates an interesting evaluation question for MOD. The competition requires a common platform for 5 variants, but BDT UK is offering 2 different rifles under that common bid. How MOD evaluates that structure against a single platform bid from a competitor is not publicly established. Finally, the sovereign manufacturing requirement, which was BDT UK's most distinctive competitive argument, is now a more crowded space. HK UK's acquisition of Globe Engineering in March 2026 means the industrial contest has caught up with the rifle contest. BDT UK's documented supply chain, Cambridge Precision, Skydock, London Proof House, represents a more elaborated position, but HK's established history of executing major SA80 programs through the Nottingham facility gives it credibility that does not rest solely on declared intent. MOD's weighting of the industrial depth versus industrial track record is not publicly established, and that ambiguity is material to the outcome. The Beretta NARP represents something specific in Grayburn competition, the argument that the right answer is not simply the most proven rifle, but the one that comes with the industrial commitment to re-establish what the United Kingdom has not had for 25 years, the ability to manufacture its own service weapons on home soil. Whether that argument is sufficient to overcome the maturity gap against more established platform is the central question around BDT UK's bid. The assessment phase will provide the answer. Episode 5 of this series covers the other platform in BDT UK's Grayburn offer, the Sako M23, developed with the Finnish and Swedish Defence Forces and carrying a very different operational heritage to the NARP.